Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Bishop's side of things. We finally get kind of like the quote-unquote villain side of things, which I think is kind of interesting. I was so curious what they were doing with Bishop, considering what they did with him last season, so I was curious to say, he's just full-on playing a villain role to some extent. Basically, he's still tripping about the legends, they kidnapped me and they did what they did to my mind. So I'm like, so I was like, well, of course you won't remember all the aspects of your own involvement, which is everything being what it is. So you think the legends are bad guy, and you're like, right, they need to be stopped. He basically used Gideon and remade the Wave Rider, kind of an evil Wave Rider. And I love he's got his assistant Ava there along the way, because it's right, you've diverted billions of dollars from your own corporation into this, and it's it's time travel, and it's we can, cloning, I'm going to do good with it, but I can also expand upon it with time travel, and first and foremost, we're going to go kill those legends because of what they've done. So, and I love the whole thing of him being a time master now. It's to be fair, she's been reset, so it's of course we're going to bring that back because it's going to be her default. Think of right, you need a time master. It's once again, I don't know if they've even used that. I think this is the first time they've used that term since. Well, I think they probably referenced it maybe during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that's when the multiverse collapsed. That's where they went to the vanishing point, which is where the Time Masters originally went. So that might be the last time it's been used in the Arrowverse's continuity, that terminology. But obviously we haven't talked about the Time Masters since season 1. I do believe that was the last time we talked about. But didn't something else correlate with them later on in the show? I don't remember. Time Master related. I might be still thinking about season 1, or maybe season 2 is what I'm probably thinking of as well. But regardless, just to kind of have him be ooh, I'm a time master. And so he's getting all excited about it, and he proceeds to go wait, we know where the legends are? Because I some ripples throughout. It's Odessa 1925. It's cool, let's go kill them. Which she's no, we don't know what kind of effect that'd be. Yeah, I get your warning, blah, 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 blah. Go. And he blows up the ship because he didn't do any actual recon, so he didn't realize the legends weren't even on the ship yet. So there's also, it doesn't 100%, but it kind of throws out my thought, I thought was the legends came back in time. It's no, Bishop's the one that blew up their ship. But 2, it could still be a thing of, they could stop it from happening. Because of time travel shenanigans, they could stop it, but I think it's no, we gotta once again, it's the thing of changing certain things, but other things need to stay the same because it all worked out for the better. Everything was an unnecessary part. Once again, the loop thing again. So I think that still is applicable in this situation, because it could be let's go back in time and stop that Wave Rider forever blowing our Wave Rider up. It's no, we need it to happen. So, but the moment he did, he was yeah, I'm so excited. Oh, this is so amazing. And then it turns out, actually, the legends are, no, there's still a ripple effect from you blowing up trying to kill the legends. And it's turns out, Hoover was dead. And he's you know what? All right. Oh, we'll send, we could send, a clone. And I was that's interesting. I was that makes sense. Now it kind of makes sense where the technology, the robot situation came from. But it's right. Clones are fallible. Look at the one that you had that joined the Legends, and then I love his Ava is don't compare us to that traitor. But it's obviously there's other Avas too. There's a whole planet of Avas that are doing their own thing as well. But it's right, she's the only real traitor that at least this Ava's aware of. So it's right, but let's make a clone, but make him a robot. We're going to take the cloning process, and we're going to take Gideon's robotic machinery and stuff. So we're making robots because this way they'll know all the significant things they are supposed to be replacing their said person with. This Hooverbot knows right, this is all the stuff I'm supposed to do, and so that way it's not fallible. And I love that with Harcook later on, and it's wait, what? The robot's dead. How? It blew up, and it's how? We just put it in the timeline. Okay, let's see its last thing. Wait, my God, the legends are still alive, and it's cool. Okay, so let's try it again. There's even a whole situation of trying to decide, like, oh, what are we going to equip it with? I forgot how many times. God, I know, like, it happened yet again, but then it still ended up happening of, like, the legends. Well, because Gideon kept getting outvoted, because now it's not just the Time Master, it's the Time Mistress. Which maybe in my head, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm thinking too much about it, but I'm almost like, it's almost like it's almost like the Master and the Mistress connecting, which once again is funny because Michelle Gomez, who played the Mistress in Doctor Who, is in Doom Patrol, so it's like it's all in that, like, what this is kind of pulling a little bit from, also, like, kind of exists in the DC universe, live action wise, TV show wise already. So I just think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if that's necessarily like a correlation they were going for in that with the Time Master and Time Mistress. It's just like, right, I'm the Time Master, you're my lady in my right hand, so Time Mistress. But I'm like, I can't help but think of, like, yeah, Missy in that the Mistress, and, you know, Missy in that aspect. So that's why I'm like, it just makes me think of that. I don't know if that's what they were necessarily winking and nodded to, but that's what I correlated from it. But I love that immediately you kept focusing on Gideon being like, no, this is the wrong thing to do, but they completely outvote her. And I was like, is she going to kill them? Because are we going to do a Skynet thing of like, right, I know what my mission is, I'm going to do it by myself. It's like, no, he's the Time Master, so she wouldn't do anything to hurt him unless probably he really screwed the pooch. And then she'd be like, okay, you got to die because you're too much of a detriment. It's like, nah, she threw Ava into, like, well, I don't know if she's dead because she's a clone, and I don't know what else is mixed in her. Like, well, typically they are closer to humans even though they're clones, so it's like she might be dead. I don't know if that's going to be a thing of like, oh right, there's some like a random Ava out there, and no, it probably is a thing of like she's just straight up dead just because of that, because Gideon wasn't too worried about it. So, but maybe Gideon's like, it's a necessary like sacrifice to do that. I also like that there's a little bit of low-key, I mean, maybe it came up in this before, but I don't remember it. If it came up before, I don't, but they almost use a little bit of low-key logic here, where it's like, cool, you can do something to them because later on, you find out they're in Chernobyl, which we'll get to the legend side of things later on, but it's like, oh, this is the perfect time to wipe them out, because if you do it, it's close enough to a catastrophic event, it won't have too much of a ripple. It's just like, you know, the whole hiding in Apocalypse is that way you don't create any branch timelines, that type of thing. So it kind of made me think of that. Like, I don't know if they've ever really brought that concept up before. Maybe, once again, maybe they haven't. I'm just like blanking on it. But I thought that was so interesting that was kind of a solution after like Bishop finding out, like, wait, you got rid of Ava, and it's like, yeah, also I dosed you with a sedative. It's like, yeah, you got to kind of accept things as they are now. Like, there can only be one ship, and there can be only one captain, not a Time Mistress. So it's kind of like almost like a thing of like, yeah, we're going to do this together. This is how it has to be. You and me together forever. And also finds out that he's like, he tries to call back home, and he picks up, and he's like, wait, why you sound exactly like, it's like, he's like, wait, and then he finds out that she cloned a robot. He's like, oh, there can only be one me. I'm like, okay, you definitely wrote that scene and that line on purpose. I'm like, right, the irony is because you made a crap ton of yourself because you kept cloning yourself over and over and over and over and over again, so there is just no one you. That's the irony behind it. But I mean, in fact, he actually learns about his history, and he's like, wait, I'm the bad guy? The legends actually stopped me from, like, causing mass destruction. And he's like, yeah, and they brought me back to do good, by helping stop me. So he's like, I completely misunderstood the legends. They're not the bad guys in this situation. But for Gideon, as the reset, being like, no, like, they need to be stopped. They're causing too much. They cause too much change. I mean, because also Gideon also knows, like, I guess with the time frame of everything, considering what the legends have done timeline wise, it's like we can't just destroy them, because we kill them, it can wipe. Like, you have to be very specific about. I mean, there's also like the things that they haven't done yet, so it's like you don't want them to like go any further, but you also have to be careful because if you kill them, it could undo what they've already done, and they have done significant things. They've been a part of saving not only the world, time, the universe. So it's like, yeah, you don't want to kind of completely like dismiss that and wipe that out, so that's a complicated thing. So, but Bishop's kind of, stuck, wallowing in the fact that, like, right, I did this, I made that mistake. So that's why I think it's interesting that he's not necessarily a full-blown villain. He's actually trying to be a better person. He's like, I don't want to have to be the villain I am, but it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about it because that robot version of you is going to do everything. So that's interesting to think that probably like that version of him is probably already that's it. Well, that's going to be interesting to see how that works, because that then begs the question, does that mean like OG Bishop at some point in time, because you are kind of retroactively retconning some things, but really it's not a retcon because you didn't know it the entire time. It's like, so does that means that at some point he got replaced with the robot version of himself, but that robot version probably was like, oh, I need to die and continue the cloning process. So it's hard to say whether that's going to be a thing of like, oh, it just fits into the natural storyline of like last season without too many bumps or anything, because everything's going to be a seamless transition. Or is it going to be a thing of like, no, we are creating an alternate timeline now because of the element of these killer robots, and when this is all undone, that's going to off track some of that, because they need it. The Legends need that too, because if it wasn't for that, like, things wouldn't have worked out the way it did if it wasn't for like everything needed to happen. So we got everything that happened in season 6. So once again, loops and having to finish the the loop having to complete itself. So that's interesting, but that's there. On the other side of things, we catch up with the Legends as they, obviously Gwen is flipping out because he's like, this isn't where we're supposed to be. The machine was off kilter because there were so many people, so he's like, I need time to fix it. So he goes off with Bayrod and Zari to fix it. Nate and her haven't really had the conversations they wanted to have. And like Nate plays centerfold for this episode in the regards of like, right, he sees that Ava and Sarah are kind of getting frustrated because they're both like, Sarah's trying to be optimistic of like, oh, everything's going to work out, we're going to fix all of this, but Ava's stressed. So Astra goes off with Ava and Spooner goes off with Sarah. They go hunting, which makes perfect sense considering like Sarah's assassin skills and everything. And then I think Astra to some extent kind of, about, I forgot she was later on when Ava let out a scream. She's like, oh, that's a good scream. She's like, I would know. I've caused plenty of them in the past. But it's like, yeah, Ava got an axe. Astra gave her an axe and she began chopping wood, and she was just so frustrated. She was letting out her feelings, which I love later on when she runs into Sarah. She's like, oh, I was really good. She's like, yeah, I know, I've seen that rage. I've seen how like scary you can get when you're, so like, oh, I'm gonna hold that for you. But at the same time, there's the whole Gary and Gideon situation, because Gary's like there being like, oh, so what about you and Zari? It's like, oh, she wants me to move into the totem. It's like, that's great. And then the look on his face was like, oh, that's not great. And it's just like, no, Gary, you're not going to be my sounding board this episode. And it's like, okay. So him and Gideon are off, because both of them enjoying the whole human thing of like, oh, like, you want to enjoy swimming, but also it's like, oh, it's skydiving. He's like, no, I'm afraid of heights. And she's just like, do you want to have sexual intercourse with me? I was like, Jesus, Gideon. And apparently they did, which I love that later on Sarah and Ava like, do you think they? No. It's like, actually, I'm glad, because I was getting those feelings last episode. I was like, are we shipping Gideon and Gary? Well, because Gideon, like, the last time Gideon was like, there was something between Gideon and anyone on Wave Rider, it was like Rip. That was the last time. I wanted to say that was season 3, wasn't that? Because that was the whole like getting Zari a part of the team. Like, I want to say that was like, was it that episode? I want to say it might have been that episode, that like time loop, or it might have just been a different episode entirely. But like, yeah, like Gideon and him shared something, so it's like that's probably the last time. So, but yeah, they're both like non-humans enjoying being around humans. That's also the thing too of like, yeah, that's the aspect that he enjoys the most about being human. And at the end, them holding hands, you're like, that's super adorable. I'm happy for you, Gary. Also, it talks about like nipples, and it's just like he's like, I love nipples. She's like, you got them too, and he's like, yeah, but I don't have just two, I have three, and I'm like, right, because like let's not forget the whole like, oh yeah, the unicorn biting off your nipple and then it coming back like a demon possessed nipple. Let's not forget about that whole storyline back in season 4 with the Mysteries. Once again, if we haven't seen the Flash episode, I do like that Ray talks a little bit about like, oh man, haven't talked to the Legends in a while. In particular, I haven't talked to Nate in a while. I wonder, maybe just them being like, you know, different century, different time is all that is. It's like, right, I like that little winking nod of like, yeah, you're not gonna get here. They're not gonna hear much from the Legends because they're pretty much probably gonna be stuck in 1925. Well, at that time, no, but they're going to be bouncing around, but not consistently. They don't have a consistent enough time travel method like the Wave Rider, and not with pinpoint accuracy, so that's definitely going to be an element throughout the season. So they're not stuck in 1925 anymore, they're going to be bouncing around, but still. But other than that, we had the whole Zari and Behrad helping out Gwen thing, because he's freaking out, because for him it's like the notion of knowing like, yeah, I thought I had a holy like God-given mission, and it turns out I don't, because it turns out I was supposed to fail. He's like, yeah, so like if I try to help you, I'm just going to fail anyway, because like that's what I'm meant to do. I was meant to like die in that explosion and stuff like that. But it's like, time isn't so. Once again, certain aspects it needs to be, other aspects it's so fluid that it's like, no, things can be changed. You know, obviously there's going to be a lot of parallels between this and Flash because they both deal heavily with time travel and stuff. But Behrad's obviously the very like easygoing type, so his necessary approach doesn't necessarily click with Gwen, but now we find out later on, like, once again, Sarah talked to him a little bit about it, but the whole thing of like what his mission's about, the person in particular he's trying to save, Zari gets him to kind of finally open up about it, because he was snippy towards Behrad of like, oh, you know, you don't know anything, and it turns out basically during the war, him and a buddy of his, Alan, were sent to get reinforcements, but Alan was gunned down. And for him, he blames himself because he's like, I froze. Like, all I could do was just stand there and watch his dead body. And it didn't matter because the people we were trying to save, they were going to. So he felt like he let them all down. That's why he wants to go back in time. It's to save everyone else, but also to save Alan. And then Zari pieces it together. It's like, oh, you must really care about him. It's like, you loved him. Yeah, and it's like, because remember when Sarah told him about her and Ava, he was like, wait, what? Like, I think that he's like, right, like, oh, so that's okay, like, a woman can be with a woman, so it's like, right, I think, you know, considering the time frame, it's like, not too comfortable about. But Zari opens up to him, too, because she's like, I won't go into it because it's a long story, but the original Behrad, her Behrad, was like, yeah, a lot like, because that's what, like, touched, Gwen was like, when he looked at Behrad, like the very like laissez-faire like attitude Behrad had, it's kind of like, it reminds him of Alan so much. I think that's what made him so infuriated, because like being around Behrad was almost like just a constant reminder of what happened. And also but for Zari, it's like, yeah, when I look at you, like, you remind me a lot of OG Behrad, of like the soldier that he was. And it's like, I lost him, but because of, you know, me meeting up with these wacky people, the Legends, you know, I had the good friends, and they helped me change things. It's like, you know, I was able to save my brother, my family, and just like save a lot of people I didn't even know I was helping, you know, people I didn't know. And it's like, right, this group of eccentrics did that. It's like, yeah, they did that for me. Like, together, like, we can do that same thing for you, you know. So obviously they know about making big swings for, like, you know, on personal levels like that for people. I'd skipped over it, but I brought it up earlier. They found out they are in, was in 1986, specifically with Chernobyl, but being inspired by this story and finding out that they're in a situation where so many people are going to die, Gwen takes it upon herself like, no, we're good. Like, maybe this is why I'm here. This is my mission to help people, to save people. Kind of, he's like, maybe I couldn't do anything necessarily about the Alan thing. Maybe I can in the future, but right now I could do this. But obviously it's like, right, we're not supposed to like make any big waves, but it's like, right, like if we have the opportunity, let's do it. So they were able to get everyone out of the facility. Granted, Ava and Sarah just kind of like, oh, those are kind of big waves you're kind of making, but it's like, no, like it was a necessary thing of like, we saved so many lives. So, and it's like, yeah, Zari even said it herself, like she's the type of person that's like, yeah, I'm the type to like fluctuate, like, I'm the like, changer of history. Like she's the biggest proponent of that amongst the group. She always has been. But when they do get back, it's like, right, we got to get out of here, get the time machine working. And obviously Nate and Zari had their moment, because Nate had been weighing the pros and the cons, because I love the whole thing of like, what if our ancestors don't like me? Which I'm like, once again, I'm like, I was misthinking. I thought about it a little weirdly, because I was like, wouldn't Amaya be there? But I'm like, no, she's not Zari's ancestors. We're talking about her ancestors, not because I don't think they were specifically talking about previous totem bear. Like, I think they'll be there, but like, I think it's specifically her own ancestors, right? Because she's not related to Amaya, so that's why I'm like, yeah, she's not. So I'm like, well, I don't think she's not, right? She just, like, it just ended up in her. No, it is, because it passes. No, it is, because it passes down from the family, right? Because, like, that's how Mari ended up getting it, because, like, Amaya was, like, her grandmother. Or she just their mother. God, I'm blanking and screwing this all up in my head, because I'm like, no, like, the Tarazis aren't related to Amaya and her family. So, yeah, that's why I was like, that's why I was confused, because I was thinking, like, it still might be, like, I kept thinking of it like an Avatar situation of, like, right, like, more so specifically, like, how I thought it was, like, anyone that was a previous totem bearer is going to be there, but it's like, no, it's her specific ancestors are going to be there, so, because I was about to say, like, why isn't Nate more worried about the whole Maya thing? It's like, right, it's her ancestors are not, like, previous totem bearers necessarily, so I was like, okay, never mind that. I kind of, like, confused myself with that, but at the end of the day, he decides, like, yeah, I'm ready to move in, because, it's like, yeah, it might be kind of adjustment, but as long as I'm with you, like, that's all that matters. That's the biggest thing to focus on, and being able to be with her. And I'm like, that's really sweet. And luckily they get the time machine working, let's go. And at the same time, the Wave Rider shows up. And, we'd already established earlier that Bishop made it so that God, what was it? The bathroom was a no camera zone, but it turns out there was actually a lot more to it. Part of me was, because he was like, oh, I'd rather die than be a part of this. But he's like, nope, I actually don't have plans of dying. He gets on the toilet. I'm like, which part of me in the back of my head, I'm like, is that actually a thing? Because I was about to say, like, it reminds me of, like, Elvis, like, the whole, like, dying on the toilet thing. I'm like, I always thought that was a rumor. I don't know if there was validity to, like, him actually, like, dying on the toilet or not. I've always heard that, but I don't know if that's one of, like, those, like, old wives' tale type of thing of, like, that's just a rumor. It was never confirmed. I don't know. Maybe there was some. It just made me think of that to an extent. But he's coming down, flying down in a parachuting toilet, and they're like, "What's that? Is that a toilet coming down? Who cares? Let's get out of here." And it's like, "Oh crap!" And he gets teleported with him. So it's like, "Yeah, we definitely got Bishop with us now." So it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what time frame we end up going to next. But like I said, it's gonna be a lot of probably like non pinpoint accuracy, like time jumping. So. But Evil Gideon is going to be out and about, which is interesting timing because we got like Evil Mary right now. So that's definitely interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.